So this video is for the 112 page. It's mislabeled. I apologize for that. You can pop this top page off. And so what we're doing today, it's called literal equations, and all we're doing is moving pieces around. And you've got to be able to move pieces around because this year your linear equations are not just in slope-intercept form. We do standard form. So you've got to be able to move pieces. And so it's going to tell you what to solve the equation for. This one says solve for b. That means you want to move everything away from this b. So I want just this b on this side. So all that's attached to it is this positive 2, and the same rules apply. If it's positive, we do the opposite. So we would subtract 2 from both sides. I'd be left with a b. And then c minus 2, I just write it together. If there's no like terms to combine, you just put them in a row. And so that's what we're doing today. That's fine. Just make sure you write your answers on this sheet for me, okay? All right, so number 2, solve for m. So I want the m by itself. That means I need to get this minus 3 away. So we do the opposite. We add 3 to both sides. This cancels, and then it's just n plus 3, because I can't combine those. They're two different things. So m equals n plus 3. So number 3, solve the equation for x. So we want to get everything away from x. That means this 8. That 8's being multiplied. So we divide both sides by that 8. And you can just write it like a fraction like that. Y over 8. Number 4 says solve the equation for f. So I want to get f by itself. So this time it's a letter. If it's written like this, it's division. So the opposite of division is multiplication. I want to multiply both sides by whatever's on the bottom there. And then that will cancel. And then we just attach those two pieces. If it's multiplication, we can just shove them together. Okay. All right, let's look here. All right, solve the equation for r. So I've got an r and a t attached together. That's multiplication. So to undo that, I have to divide. So that will cancel, and then d over t. When I write these, though, the letter I'm solving for, I want that to go on the left-hand side. It is an R. I will always cross my 7s. So if anything looks weird, numbers I typically write different. All right, solve the equation for b squared. So this is addition again. So you can move an entire piece, and you just do the opposite. If you're moving a whole piece, you're either going to add it or subtract it. So in this one, it's positive, so I would subtract it from both sides. And for this one, I would write it in alphabetical order. So I would put the a first, and then that c squared is positive. So you don't have to mess with the exponent or anything. You don't have to cancel the exponent out, anything like that. Just when we're moving pieces, it's just addition and subtraction. I'm going to leave number 7 for you. Number 8. I've got 2 options for how I can do number 8. This is why I showed you during inequalities that we can divide this whole side by 2. Because that's my easiest option in a problem like this. Because that will cancel. So I've got p divided by 2, and then that just equals L plus W. If I'm solving for L, I need to move the W. So I would subtract W from both sides. So when I write it out, so that's going to cancel for me. I'm going to put the L first. Oh, sorry. Oh. And I don't like using L's like this because that looks a lot like a 1. But I would do P over 2 and then minus the W. All right. I know we're going through this quick. So this one, solve the equation for h. So I need to get h by itself. H is being multiplied by r squared, and it's being multiplied by pi. If it's multiplication, I can do that move all at once. So I can divide both sides by pi r squared. And then that whole thing cancels out for me. So again, I'm going to start with the h. So I want the letter I'm solving for on the left. And then v over pi r squared. So a lot of the time in these, we are just moving pieces. That's it. I'm going to leave number 10 for you. I think I'm going to leave 11 for you. So let's look at 12. So I'm trying to get the h by itself. So I need to get all of these pieces away. So the first piece that I want to move, we're multiplying by a third. How do we undo multiplying by a third? Remember to flip it. It's a fraction. So I can multiply both sides by 3, and it will cancel that fraction out. So you would do the same thing here. Get rid of the 1/2 by multiplying by 2. If I want the h by itself, so now we're kind of back to this. We can divide by the pi r squared. And then all that'll cancel out, and I've just got that plain old h now. So 12 is h equals 3v over pi r squared. All right. Which one? 12? H equals 3v over pi r squared. Ask, what was it?
Why do we do this?
Because you have to write equations in standard form this year. And so they'll give you an equation like this in this form, and they'll say write it in standard form. This isn't just converting to standard form. This is just getting used to moving the pieces. Sometimes they'll give you equations that aren't even in standard form.
So like it'll make more sense for me actually.
When you get to where you're going to use this skill. This is just the basic skill, and then it's going to be applied to other things down the road. Does that make sense? We have to move a lot of pieces this year when we're working with equations. All right, 13. Solve for b. So I want the b by itself. mx is being added to b, so I can just subtract mx from both sides. And so I would have y minus mx equals b. I could have given you the standard answer that the state of Texas says I have to teach this to you. It's one of those things. I'm going to leave... I'm going to leave 14 for you. So 15, S equals PH plus 2B. We're solving for B. So now we're getting into two-step. So we want to move this first. This is being added, or this is positive. So we would subtract pH from both sides. And then I've got a 2 being multiplied by the b. So to get that 2 out of the way, I would divide both sides by 2. And so 15, again, the letter I'm solving for on the left. And then S minus pH over 2. When you get into geometry as well, when you're working with formulas, you're going to use this skill a lot too. I'm going to leave 16 for you, and that's the last one you're going to have to work on your own, is 16. So let's do these last 4 together. So this one says solve for m. So m is being multiplied by this whole piece. So I can divide by that whole piece. And then I can divide this side. And that's just the rule of equations. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. And so this all cancels. And I would have y minus y1 over x minus x1. And that's the slope formula. That's how we find slope by hand. 18 says solve for r. So r is being multiplied by pi, and it's being squared. So I'm going to get rid of the pi first. So if it's being multiplied, I can divide. And then to undo an exponent of 2, the opposite of squaring a number is square rooting it. And that square root will cancel that exponent of 2. That's where things start getting tricky, is when you have exponents in there. So 18 would be r equals the square root of a over pi. $19, we're not going to have to get rid of that exponent. I can have that whole R3 by itself. So to get rid of the fraction, remember we flip it. So we would multiply both sides by 3/4. And this will cancel this. All I've got left is pi times r cubed. So I would divide by pi. And so before I divide by pi, I want to write this all together. And again, this, when we start getting into fractions, so the 3 and the v would go on top, and the 4 would go on the bottom, if I would multiply those together and simplify. So if I'm dividing by pi here, and I want to divide this by pi, I can just add it to the bottom of that fraction. And I know that's not giving you a lot of explanation. It's just fraction rules. And I hate giving you that response. I hate telling you. It's just because that's the way it's supposed to be. And then last one, number 20. Solve for B1. So I need to get all this out of the way. All of this is being multiplied. So undo multiplying by half. We multiply by a 2. Undo multiplying by an h, we divide by h, and that cancels. And then I would subtract the b2 from the entire thing. And so it would look like this. b1 equals 2a over h minus b2. R cubed, yep, sorry. It should be R cubed. So I left you 3, I left you 5. So 11, 14, and 16, and then 7 and 10.